The story of the most feared defender on the planet begins like a whisper in the backline, a silent avalanche just before dawn. When the whistle blew and the attacker stepped forward, he knew, somewhere in the shadows, stood the man who would decide whether this moment would be triumph or torment. No flash, no drama, just steel and silence. This was the world of Pietro Vierchowod, a center-back whose reputation was built not on hype but on dread. Born in a small town in Lombardy, Italy, Vierchowod didn't arrive into the world of football as a prodigy draped in spotlight. He walked into it like a storm portent. Over years of training, of races down leafy streets, of scrappy matches and bruised shins, he cultivated something subtler, an instinct for danger, a readiness to intervene, and a hunger to ruin the quiet rhythm of the opponent. As he climbed through the ranks, that instinct sharpened into precision. His pace, rare for a man of his size, his anticipation, and his brutal decision-making place him among the most terrifying defenders in football history. As his Wikipedia biography notes, he was a lightning quick, absolutely brutal. By the time he reached the peak of his powers in Serie A, an era when the Italian league was a crucible for defensive masters, Vierchowod didn't merely stop attacks, he rewrote the script. Attacking players spoke of him in hushed tones. They said that facing him felt like a trap. Not the moment of the tackle, but the moment he walked toward you. No hesitation. You felt the game shift even before the ball moved. Gabriel Batistuta, one of the great forwards of that age, identified Vierchowod as the best defender in the world in 1992. What made Vierchowod so feared was the amalgamation of qualities that rarely go together: physique and speed, intellect and ferocity, vision and ruthlessness. From his earliest days as a stopper, he mastered man marking. Later, he adapted to zonal systems with frightening ease. The guy who once ground attackers into submission simply evolved, recalibrated. He wasn't primitive, he was meticulous. A veteran journalist recalled Gary Lineker saying, "He was the hardest defender I ever faced." Imagine stepping onto the pitch, mind racing, legs fresh, but before you even touch the ball, you feel his presence. You scan the scoreboard and you see his number. You glance across and you measure the risk. And you read this. He doesn't shout, he doesn't need to. He simply is. The ball comes in, you try to make your move, and then you realize he was already 5 steps ahead. The space you thought belonged to you is gone. Your shot, blocked. Your run, anticipated. Your angle, cut off. The defender doesn't just stop attacks, he disarms ambition. But fear isn't enough to build a legacy. Respect demands something deeper. Vierchowod had that too, on the field and in the locker room. He led, he organized, he commanded. Attackers found themselves not just muscled out, but outthought. The stories of him chasing down wingers, bringing from recovery runs, cutting off passes in split seconds, they're legendary. Yet he carried them off with the minimalist coolness of someone who believes they're just doing the job. The highlight reels show the tackle, but the true memory is the dead air afterwards, when the forward looked up and realized it was over. Over time, the reputation built so strong that the fear itself became part of the weapon. Opponents would arrive already unsettled. They'd check behind, look for the opponent's number, track the man who made them think twice. That kind of psychological dominance, bigger than the skill itself, is what separates a great defender from a terror. Vierchowod didn't just defend, he colonized the half space of the mind. He turned confidence into doubt, movement into hesitation, space into fear. And in doing so, he rewrote the rulebook for defenders. There are those who say the modern game has few truly feared defenders anymore, not because the talent isn't there, but because the context changed. Space is bigger, movement is faster, the mindset of fear has been softened by hype. In that light, looking back at Pietro feels like scanning an old war footage, raw, relentless, unquestionable. His era demanded something different, something darker, and he provided it. Consider his impact beyond statistics. The goals he prevented weren't always counted. The runs he interrupted, the angles he shut, the attackers he silenced. These don't show up on the scoreboard, yet they shaped matches. They breathed belief into his team and robbed belief from theirs. The legend isn't in the numbers. It's in the absence of forward momentum, the frozen frame before release, the prelude to defeat that starts with his shadow. If you asked a striker from that era to name the one defender he'd least want to face, the name Vierchowod would appear more than most. Not because he was violent, though he could be, but because he was inevitable. The ball would come to you, you'd think you have time, you'd see a slit of space, and then you blink and he's there. The tide has turned and you didn't even sense it. That's fear. He wears no crown and highlight reels. Unlike the flashy defender who steals the camera with forward surges or spectacular blocks, Vierchowod in plain sight. His art was absence, absence of goals conceded, absence of attacking hope. When he left the pitch unbeaten, you didn't see a great save, you saw nothing. And enough opponents walked off with an empty scoreline and a hollow feeling in their gut to guarantee his place in football's dark pantheon. In the great narrative of football defenders, Paolo Maldini, Sergio Ramos, Virgil van Dijk, they all command respect, some command fear. But few achieved what Vierchowod did, to become a name that attackers dread even today. In club history books and the whispers of old forwards, his name floats like a warning. Watch number 4. The keeper might well have done all the work, but the defender left the space empty before the attacker even arrived. That is legacy. The most feared defender on the planet doesn't have to tell you he's coming. He just stands at the boundary of your plan, and when your plan lands, he's already dismantled it. Pietro Vierchowod let you approach the edge of glory, then quietly pulled the plug on your progress. And now I want to hear from you. Who do you believe is the most feared defender of all time? Does Pietro Vierchowod own that throne in your mind? Or does someone else wear the cloak of terror? Write your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the debate going. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button, subscribe for more deep dives into football's greatest characters, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next journey into the game's most compelling legends.